The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Monday, June 6th, 2011, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us here for the show. We're going to have ourselves a good time, and welcome to nicer weather. Oh my God, it's so nice here in Portland, Oregon. It's a shame to have to be down here in Rolla J Studios, but I'm sure we'll get by. Also, if you may have noticed, if you're listening in stereo here, you're actually hearing us in stereo on NORML Show Live. We're now broadcasting and encoding through a flash media encoder, which gives us higher quality video and now stereo audio. So I hope you enjoyed that. Now, normally at this time we'd be introducing Ganja John, the engineer. He's still coming on his way back from Roseburg. So joining us in John's seat today is the intern, Kaliko.
Hello.
Hi, Kaliko. I've got to get a camera on you somehow. Where's it?
Oh, there. I'm invisible.
Oh, I know what it is. I put your camera over there. I didn't switch all that stuff up yet. Well, there he is. There's Kaliko hanging out there. And also in our virtual studio in beautiful Grastoria, Oregon, we've got the lovely Cannabis Carrie.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Carrie. How you doing?
Kaliko sort of looks like Kilroy there poking over the monitor.
Yeah, a little strange here. I got some new gear here in the studio. I just got a rack case for all of the miscellaneous effects units and headphone amps and all of that. It was part of my shopping adventure, Carrie. You'd be so proud of me. I went to the Guitar Center looking to buy myself a bass amp, and I thought, maybe if there's some monitors, if I can pick up some used monitors, that might be nice too. I found a pair of used monitors. The guy didn't have an inventory, couldn't find a price on them. So he gave them to me.
I love it, Russ. Good shopping.
Absolutely.
You get a gold star for shopping.
Yeah, absolutely free. So I took the money I was going to spend on monitors and bought a rack for the show. So that's pretty cool. This will be really nice when we travel down to the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup here at the end of the month, June 25th and 26th. All this stuff packs up in 2 boxes now, Carrie.
Oh, wow. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
it's going to be a
nice.
Great road trip.
All right. So Carrie brings us our hemp headlines right after the first break. So, Carrie, what do we got in the news today?
Well, it was a long weekend with marijuana stories. We're going to start off with a Michigan judge who has ordered some state records turned over to the feds. Also, Arizona's first medical marijuana death. I'll tell you all about that.
Okay.
Some deputies were termed legally justified to shoot a gardener. And also, the Oregon dispensaries are now put officially on notice. We're going to tell you about that as well.
All right. We'll get to all of that. And speaking of those Oregon dispensaries, that's going to be the subject of my radical rant today at 45 past the hour. So you'll want to stick around for that. On today's show, also at 20 after, we do Roots Monday every Monday. That's blues, jazz, country, folk, acoustic, the origins of the great music that we love today. And today we've got video from Morgan Davis, Reefer Smoking Man. Cannabob brought that to us. I wasn't able to get the upload for today quick enough, so we're going to go with that one, Reefer Smoking Man by Morgan Davis. And then at 30 past, we're going to go with a Dr. Mitch Earlywine, a best of, so you're getting kind of an extra dose of cannabis science here. He's going to talk about the Center for Addiction and Substance Abuse, also known as CASA. That's Joseph Califano's group that is always trying to convince us, what about the children? Oh my God, if we legalize marijuana, what about the children? And Dr. Mitch debunks a whole lot of the mythology involved in that situation. And then, like I mentioned earlier, a radical rant at the end of the show. We're going to talk about the letter, or it was a letter actually going out to the Oregon dispensary, signed by 33 out of 34 of the district attorneys in this state. Very, very sad. All that and more is coming up on NORML Show Live. We are the voice of the marijuana nation. Stick around. We'll be right back after this.
In today's busy world, we're inundated by advertising for all types of pharmaceuticals that come with a laundry list of potential side effects. Shouldn't you have better medical choices? Natural alternatives to pills pushed by Big Pharma? At Alternative Medical Choices, you could choose natural, safe, and effective alternative therapies that are right for your budget without nasty side effects. Cannabis, or marijuana, has been a legal medicine in the Pacific Northwest since 1998. Our doctors will help determine your qualifications for a medical marijuana recommendation in Oregon, no matter where you live. Our massage therapists will ease your aches and stress with soothing hemp seed oil or cannabis-infused massage salves. We also offer acupuncture, Reiki, and other alternative health therapies. Call Alternative Medical Choices in Portland, Oregon at 503-288-5579 or visit our website at www.altmedchoices.com. We specialize in out-of-state recommendations. That's www.altmedchoices.com or call 503-288-5579.
Tjena, jag heter David, PKA The Dirtball. Vi ska röka hela tiden, alla år.
If I were to tell you that in America, right now, over 1 million children sell marijuana, what would you think? Would you think that any public policy that creates over 1 million teenage marijuana dealers needs to be re-examined and possibly amended? You would not be alone. The members of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, have been working since 1970 to reform marijuana laws such that responsible adults, not children, sell and use marijuana. Isn't it high time to reform America's misguided marijuana laws? This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML in Washington, D.C. Only concerned citizens can effectively end the federal government's nearly 70-year-old prohibition on responsible adult marijuana sales and use. Want to know more about how you can help? Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's popular and informative webpage at NORML, NORML.org.
NORML Show Live reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while and share.
Cause the day was hard and your work was long and you need a break from all that's wrong. You better look at the clock cause it's 4:19. Time to reach in that pocket for your bag of green and smoke that weed. Smoke that weed. Smoke that weed. Smoke that weed.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
Medical marijuana claims its first Arizona death. Yes, that is the headline this morning on the Phoenix News-Times. Of course, it isn't actually medical marijuana that caused the death, like the headline would lead some to believe. A 38-year-old man from Phoenix was killed yesterday while he was attempting to rob a medical marijuana patient. The patient had advertised online that he was willing to sell off some of his harvest to anyone with their own medical marijuana card. Miller and another man went to meet the patient under the guise of wanting to purchase the extra cannabis. The three men met at the seller's apartment, and when the man asked to see their medical marijuana cards, one of the men said that he had forgotten it in his apartment, luring the seller back to the back of the apartment complex where he said he lived. When they got there, Miller pulled out a gun in an attempt to rob the seller of his marijuana, but the seller also had a gun, which he promptly pulled out and fired a fatal shot. The second man fled on foot with the seller's backpack and the marijuana in question. The seller immediately called 911, and when police arrived, he was attempting to give the injured man first aid. The injured man was taken to a hospital where he died of his injuries. So far, the seller, whose name has not been released yet, has not been charged with a crime. Legal analysts are debating whether he can be charged with a crime. Arizona's new statute says that when you get a medical marijuana card in the state, you must agree not to divert marijuana to anyone who isn't allowed to possess marijuana. Since the seller in this case was requiring the man to produce a medical marijuana card before he gave them his extra medical marijuana, it appears he was in good faith trying to uphold that part of the statute. Joe Uhas, the spokesperson for the Arizona Medical Marijuana Association, says that the initiative was designed so that licensed dispensaries would be the place patients could obtain medicine. He believes in this case that the seller did not meet any of the requirements to sell his medical marijuana under the law. Although he was a patient, he was not a caretaker. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office will get the last say on whether the seller will be charged with a crime. All we know so far is that the office has already taken a firm stance against medical marijuana in the state. An interesting case, Russ.
Yeah, and of course, unfortunately, headlined here as a medical marijuana death. This is not a medical marijuana death. This is a prohibition-related death. This is Governor Jan Brewer dragging her feet and not licensing any dispensaries. There's a reason why that we put dispensary language in these bills, and it's because we understand that while there's a lot of people that need marijuana medically and they're going to have a legitimate use here under a state law, 90% of the people that use marijuana don't. 90% of the people that use marijuana are healthy and breaking the law. And this leads to a prohibition-related market where the only way to solve your disputes is through violence. And so the buyers and the sellers are always on guard for any sort of shady deal that would go on. And the next thing you know, guns are pulled and people are shot. This doesn't happen in dispensaries. This doesn't happen in Colorado, in California, in the places where people can go to a nice, well-lit, regulated, safe, secure place with a bunch of other adults and engage in an adult transaction for some medicine. I mean, this is just so ridiculous and so sad to see anybody having to deal with this over marijuana, over dried plant material. And while having dispensaries would help some of this, it's not going to stop the prohibition-related deaths for all of the other people that are so-called criminals. Legalize marijuana for everyone. Regulate this market. Take it out of the shadows. Remove the violence from it. Remove the corruption from our police officers. Let's get on with treating this seriously like adults.
In an ongoing case against the operators of a Michigan Compassion Center in Flint, a federal judge has made the order that the state must turn over medical marijuana records of several people connected to the case. The case of Richard and Cassandra Krause, owners and operators of a facility that gave out medical marijuana to patients, has been a long drawn-out legal battle after the couple's facility was raided last year. The Krauses and the network of caregivers and growers that they worked with were fighting to keep their privacy rights intact going forward with the case. Since the Krauses were charged with a federal crime, prosecutors had requested the state's records regarding both the Krauses and many of their associates regarding medical marijuana. Previously, the Department of Community Health, which holds the records of medical marijuana patients in the state and oversees the implementation of the state's medical marijuana program, has refused to release any information on the medical marijuana users in the state to the federal government, citing patient confidentiality. The ruling that was handed down on Friday was that they now must hand over any record-keeping information to the feds upon request, a ruling that has patient advocates, privacy advocates, and states' rights fans calling foul. The fear in the state is that those records will be used to prosecute those following state law for violating federal law. Cassandra Krause, who suffers from a terminal illness that causes her severe pain and nausea daily, says that medical marijuana has changed her life and the lives of so many others in Michigan. She says that they were working hard to abide by the state law of Michigan and says she understands that medical marijuana is a privilege. The case is to resume later this year.
Medical marijuana, oh man, not a privilege. It's something that's a natural human right. I mean, you are born on a planet where seeds sprout and develop medicine. I mean, how much more right to something do you think you should naturally have? You know, this reminds me also of the Ninth Amendment to the Constitution. Not something we talked a whole bunch about in this country, but the Ninth Amendment says that just because we enumerated a whole bunch of people's rights here in this Constitution doesn't mean that's all of them. Doesn't mean that we enumerated everything. You know, we didn't put the right to breathe air in there. We didn't put the right to drink water in there, you know, because we kind of figured that, well, everybody would see that that's self-evident. That's obvious. Of course you have the right to breathe air and drink water. And I think the founding fathers also would have thought you had the right to plant hemp and to use crops. I think that would have been a natural, inalienable right that wasn't enumerated in the Constitution, but should clearly be a Ninth Amendment right. As far as this turning over the records, oh my God, I hope the ACLU is suing on this. I hope some people are willing to sit in a cell here before they turn over the sensitive patient information to the federal government that doesn't believe their patients, of course, believes they're just criminals. And when the federal government hauls those Michigan patients into court, they will be forbidden from even putting the word medical and marijuana together in the same paragraph. They are not allowed to even mention their own personal medical conditions when they go to these trials. This is a travesty of justice, and we will bring you all the updates on this as it continues.
And a sad story out of Santa Clara, California. The district attorney's office has determined that the fatal shooting of a man by sheriff's deputies last year was justified. In July of 2010, during a marijuana eradication operation, sheriff deputies shot Jose Pinzola Soto several times. The 28-year-old man was holding a small folding knife and a pellet rifle. The deputies said that he ignored their orders to drop his weapons and that the pellet gun looked like a more serious firearm. Since the deputies had no reason to suspect otherwise, according to the district attorney's office, they decided that the deputies were legally justified and acting in self-defense and in defense of other deputies. The operation was being conducted in a rural, remote area, and they saw two men as they approached an outdoor grow. Deputies said that they yelled in Spanish and English for the man to drop their weapons and get on the ground, and testified that Soto initially lowered the pellet rifle, but the deputies say that then he aimed the weapon at them, and 3 deputies opened fire from about 140 feet away. Soto had gunshot wounds on his thighs, his upper arm, his left chest, and in his abdomen. The man had lived in the U.S. since he was 17. Jose Soto died at the scene.
Oh, boy. Well, first of all, look, I'm kind of a law and order guy. Despite being, a professional pothead and all, I actually like that there's police and that they're going to defend us against people that might have firearms or hurt someone. And if you're out there and been told in 2 languages to drop your weapon and you raise your weapon at a police officer, then yeah, sure, they may be justified in thinking that's self-defense. Of course, if we believe the story of all of these officers, right? If we believe they're telling the truth in this situation, which, no guarantee of that. But, these kind of situations happen because marijuana has to be grown outdoors, illegally, clandestinely, hidden out in the national forests, and they got to hire someone to guard that stuff, and you never know who's going to be out there. And then situations like this happen. Again, we don't see any shootings by sheriff deputies, having to go to court and defend themselves in vineyards. We don't see that in tobacco fields. We don't see that on hops fields. We only see that when it comes to marijuana, and because it's illegal. Legalize it, protect the cops, protect the growers, protect us all.
Dispensaries in Oregon were somewhat addressed last election, where voters rejected a bid to have and regulate the outlets that would sell medical marijuana to patients. As it was pointed out at the time, Measure 74 appeared to most voters as a yes or no decision if the state would allow the dispensaries or not. But as one of the sponsors and writers of the defeated bill, Attorney Lee Berger, pointed out at the time, Measure 74 was purely a regulation bill, since dispensaries were already opening up around the state in the face of a popular medical marijuana law that voters passed back in 1998. On Friday, like many other states that have received their dance card from the feds, Oregon's top lawmakers, along with the Federal Justice Department, delivered a direct warning that dispensaries in Oregon were doing business on borrowed time. The official letter that came out on Friday was signed by 33 of the 34 district attorneys, warning business operators that selling marijuana for any purpose violated both federal and Oregon law. It is still legal in Oregon to use medical marijuana in private, so private clubs that have been operating in mostly Portland might be exempt if they continue to sell everything else in the club but keep giving the marijuana free of charge. But in many private cannabis clubs in Oregon, selling and giving away medical marijuana is a slippery slope of interpretation. Some clubs are offering farmers markets where growers are allowed to come in and staff a booth to sell their overstock. The club isn't actually doing the selling here, but they do charge the vendor, and the purchase of medical marijuana may be knowingly going on in their location. The other gray area is a suggested donation in exchange for a measured amount of medical cannabis given to the donator. We're not allowed to call them a buyer. Maybe philanthropist would be a better term to use. Sort of like having to refer to that bong you want to buy as a ceramic novelty wall in the head shop. U.S. Attorney David Holton, clearly exasperated with the new dispensaries that are opening all over the state, said today, quote, "The breathtaking surge in manufacture and distribution of marijuana in Oregon is putting marijuana in the hands of more and more healthy kids, and dispensaries are fueling the crisis. We are confident that responsible landlords and property owners will remove the operators of illegal dispensaries and cannabis clubs." District Attorney Walt Beglew told reporters that drug traffickers are hiding behind the state's medical marijuana law statewide, and called the current state of the medical marijuana law in Oregon an outlaw atmosphere, saying we better rein it in now before any kid in the state can walk into a storefront and buy marijuana. Either way, many dispensary owners were discussing the letter and its implication, no doubt, with the many excellent Oregon attorneys that have been the backbone of patient rights in the state.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about this here during our Radical Rant here at the end of the show, so stick around for that. I'll give you a preview, though. They're completely wrong on their data. You probably guessed that, though. Be right back after this.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
The world's greatest cannabis competition is coming back to the Bay Area. Over 100 strains of medical marijuana will go head to head to see who's the dankest in California. Indicas, sativas, hybrids, concentrates, edibles, plus THC, CBD, and CBN testing. The High Times Medical Cannabis Cup, June 25th and 26th at the Concourse Exhibition Center in San Francisco. It's gonna be awesome. Get your tickets at medcancup.com.
Almost busted in Laredo, but for reasons that I'd rather not disclose.
I smoke pot, and I like it a lot. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer to use than alcohol. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting responsible marijuana smokers in America. And to learn what you can do to help, please contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
The show was long and we were just sitting there, and we'd come to play and not just for the ride.
NORML Show Live reminds you to never consent to a search. If you're holding and you consent, in most states you will be arrested immediately and you will go to jail. If you don't consent to a search, police may try to intimidate you by threatening to bring in drug-sniffing dogs or try to fool you by saying things will go easier if you consent. Yeah, easier for them, sure. Stand your ground, refuse the search, and ask the officer if you're free to go. If they still detain you and eventually find your contraband, you'll be no more busted than if you had allowed the search. But by refusing the search, your attorney has a chance to win your acquittal before a judge. If you consent to the search, your attorney's hands are tied. You can find a list of NORML Legal Committee attorneys specializing in marijuana cases by visiting the Find a Lawyer link at norml.org.
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Roots Monday, our celebration of the music that evolved into the popular modern music of today. We pick the best of blues, country, folk, and jazz with a 420 feel and serve it up for you every Monday. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@norml.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
All right, I love starting the week with Roots Monday, our best of blues and jazz and all of that, especially because Cannabob is now our Roots Monday editor, and he always brings us this great stuff, great reefer jazz, great blues tunes, and a lot of times he brings them to us in video. So we've got a video today we're going to go to. It's Reefer Smokin' Man by Morgan Davis, playing this on acoustic guitar. Really, really cool thing. And if you like this kind of reefer jazz or reefer blues, I encourage you to check out the Viper Hour. That's Cannabob's show right here on the NORML Network. The Viper Hour is just 1 hour of not just the music, the best of all of those 20s and 30s and 40s reefer blues, reefer jazz stuff, but also the history and the culture of it. Explains why someone was named Minnie the Moocher or Jerry the Junker, and how did we get this kind of music, and what was the culture that led to it. So I've learned so much from watching this show, and I encourage you to check it out every Monday at 5 o'clock with replays at 11 o'clock on Mondays. Also on Mondays at 3, 9, 3, and 9, there is always another hour of Roots Monday Daily Toker Tunes. So stay tuned. Here's Morgan Davis.
so all my life. I'm a reefer smoking man. I have been so all my life. You know I love my reefer much as I love my wife. And folks, I love my wife. Don't you tell me it's illegal, 'cause it's legal in my mind. I follow a higher law. Don't you tell me it's illegal, 'cause it's legal in my mind. You know it's good for the spirit. There's medicine you can find. They say that candy is damning, liquor is quicker, but if you drank too much booze, you know you bound to get sicker than a person who puffs can smoke a whole lot of stuff and still be able to talk and not fall down when he walks, just like a drunkard might do if he's at more than a few, unlike the smoker of weed who won't go crazy and speed. I would never think of sharing a ride with a person who got liquor inside, whereas I drive across this land with a reefer in my hand. Not to mention that a party with reefer always be nice and mellow. People sitting around feeling like bowls of jello. That's why I'm a reefer smoking man way back in 1965. I'm a reefer smoking man from way back in sometime in the 60s. You know I credit marijuana for keeping this boy alive. Here comes now. Hey! What? Don't this evidence make sense? I'm asking you folks. Don't this evidence make sense? Let me hear you say amen. I know this evidence makes sense. We got such a believing crowd. You know, folks, here in North America, the two most prescribed drugs today are Prozac and Viagra. That's a sad statement on our society. You start smoking reefer, you fix your problem and put a smile on your face. I'm a reefer smoking man.
Morgan Davis with the Reefer Smoking Man on your Roots Monday Daily Toker Tunes. Check that out on your Roots Monday 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock hours and on the Viper Hour coming up tonight at 5 o'clock Pacific Time.
Hey, this is John Papa. You're listening to the NORML Show Live.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
Really want to legalize marijuana? Prove it. Join NORML today at NORML.org, and your donation will help us spread the growing truth about cannabis. Free speech ain't free, you know.
Free the ganja tree, it's the healing of the nation. Free the Cali weed, good for meditation. Free the pot smokers, they renat the light. Lighting up the chalice, they keep no malice. Free the marijuana, come on, say. Free the marijuana, hear me say. Free the marijuana, come on, say. Free the marijuana.
Have you considered medical marijuana? Double-blind, peer-reviewed studies have found cannabinoid therapies to be successful in treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, brain cancers, chronic pain, diabetes mellitus, dystonia, fibromyalgia, GI disorders, hepatitis C, HIV/AIDS, hypertension, incontinence, MRSA, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, pruritus, rheumatoid arthritis, sleep apnea, and Tourette's syndrome, as well as anecdotal evidence suggesting relief from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, plus reduction in the need for narcotic painkillers. Side effects of medical marijuana can include euphoria, relaxation, anxiety, panic reactions, paranoia, tachycardia, dry eyes, dry mouth, concentration and reaction time impairment, appetite increase, and in 37 states, arrest and incarceration. But medical marijuana is non-toxic and cannot cause overdose. Medical marijuana. It's not for everyone, but ask your doctor if medical marijuana may be right for you.
It's time for NORML Show Live's Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earleywine. Dr. Earleywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York in Albany and the author of Understanding Marijuana. Now here's your dose of cannabis science.
No, folks, it's okay. You did not slip into a time warp. It is not yet Wednesday. We are just going to play a best of Dr. Mitch Earleywine interview here from about 6 months ago when the latest CASA survey came out. This is the Center for Addiction and Substance Abuse, Joe Califano, and specifically this interview deals with the whole what about the children notion. You know, as marijuana law reformers, that's the only, one of the two only good weapons our opponents have against us rhetorically are what about the children and what about the stoned drivers? And so we'll give you this opportunity to hear this interview with Dr. Mitch Earleywine where he discusses the survey and what the problems of it are as far as methodology and teen availability, and of course what our ideas are for how we could help to keep marijuana out of kids' hands. And it's not what we're doing now, where we have 1 million teenage marijuana dealers in the schools right now. It's funny, in that Oregon dispensary story, I said we don't want to have a time where any kid can walk into our storefront and buy marijuana. Yeah, instead of behind the shop class in the parking lot at high school. That's what the kind of stuff we're talking about here in this CASA survey. So we turn it over now to Dr. Mitch from about 6 months ago.
We're back from our long vacation, and as we do at the middle of every week, we like to talk about cannabis science, the latest studies and reports about cannabis, and we do so with Dr. Mitch Earleywine, who's an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany. Dr. Mitch, welcome back to the Stash.
Great to be back.
Hey, you sent me this study. This comes out of Joe Califano's group out there at the CASA, the Center for, was that Addiction and Substance Abuse?
You got it.
And this study has to do with the parents and kids and some interesting findings in this study, and I thought I'd just give you a chance to tell our listeners a little about it.
I mean, this is over a 70-page paper, but the bottom line is just that marijuana is persistently available to teens. Russ, I was stunned to learn 23% reported they could get pot in an hour or less.
Wow.
I'm on the podcast once a week. I can't get pot in an hour or less. I mean, this is pretty stunning. And 42% said they could get marijuana within a day or less.
Wow.
This is 70 years of prohibition now, and this is what we have. I mean, this was up from last year and clearly one of the highest rates of availability we've ever had. The underground market is obviously not keeping cannabis out of the hands of teens, and that was our whole idea. That was the point of this prohibition in the first place. And when we go back to the 1930s and hear all the horror stories that marijuana was supposed to cause, and clearly none of these things have panned out, and then the last hope was, well, at least it's going to keep these drugs away from our kids. Obviously, it is not. If we need a stronger message for, why it's time to change, I honestly can't imagine what it could be. Do we have to have every single teen say, I can get pot in an hour? It's really stunning to me.
Well, it's amazing with, we've seen the arrests go up year after year after year, and this report itself says that there's been a 35% increase from 2007 to 2008, 35% increase in teens who can get marijuana in an hour or less, and a 14% increase over the last year for teens who can get it in a day or less. So the more arrests just seems to make it easier to get for some reason.
Well, and the funny thing is, I feel like teens in particular are targeted, and both, law enforcement folks and the data suggest that when teens are caught with cannabis, they do get the book thrown at them, in part because of this strong sentiment to keep cannabis out of the hands of teens. You can imagine, well, gee, if we had a tax and regulated market, would things be better? Well, you look throughout this report, and consistently we see that teens say they have a harder time getting a hold of alcohol than they do of marijuana. So here's this, nice tax and regulated substance that is actually, often in people's houses, and they say they essentially are having an easier time getting this than they are, a harder time getting this than they are the cannabis that is supposedly so illicit and so underground.
Now, of course, this report doesn't want to do anything to look at the problem of prohibition. It wants to foist this problem on what they call problem parents. And well, we have seen some research, and you and I have talked about this, about some of the ways that parents can help their kids stay away from drugs. I'd like to talk a little bit about that, but also, how Califano and this CASA group wants to try to blame this on what they call problem parents, I think misses the mark a little bit.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, and you can imagine Joe Califano hearing us say, well, this is a sign for basically legalizing cannabis. They would, have a conniption to it. But really, again, when you look really close at these data, it really does suggest that the taxed and regulated stuff is, in fact, less likely to reach the hands of teens. And then he does pitch this kind of strange problem parents idea that they're just these bad parents out there, and that's why kids are doing this. Obviously, I've never met his kids, but, kids are their own human beings and make their own decisions and things. The one statistic that I do like to point to is something we've discussed in the past, is just that parent involvement and having dinner at home. And it's funny how hanging out with your own children and, having a nice dinner at home 5 to 7 nights a week suddenly makes this dramatic impact on not only teen drug use, but also other problematic behaviors, some as severe as teen pregnancy, which is kind of a big thing in the news right now.
Oh, yeah.
But also, even minor things like, getting more homework done and just having, a warmer, closer relationship with the parent. And I encourage this time and again, but the bottom line is you often discover, hey, your kids are really delightful little people. And if you, even spend just an hour and a half over chicken and rice, it's stunning how much you learn about their lives and all the things they've learned, and you get a nice perspective on the way things are in the world.
And another thing that I found interesting in this survey, he has a big headline here that says, more teens say prescription drugs are easier to buy than beer. They've been asking this, in this survey, they've been asking which is easiest for someone your age to buy, cigarettes, beer, marijuana, or prescription drugs without a prescription. And they say over the years, teens indicated that cigarettes and marijuana were easiest to buy, followed by beer and prescription drugs. But for the first time this year, more teens told us that prescription drugs are easier to buy than beer. What would you attribute that to?
In fact, I'm discovering this from my own undergrads here, and I don't mean to malign SUNY Albany, but they're telling me that the Internet availability is astounding, and that, in fact, they fill out these rather bogus medical forms, and the alleged physician somewhere in Paraguay or something confirms that they have whatever disorder it is, and suddenly they get some wild overseas envelope filled with opiates, stimulants, whatever drug of the week, and that they do tend to be able to, mix and match and trade with their friends, and, I'll give you one Ritalin for a Vicodin kind of thing, and that this has become, in some sense, a new underground market in drugs and drug use, and it's all, sort of a blind eye from the pharmaceutical companies, and these are, essential medications, and I'd hate to see them leave the market. But clearly, educating folks on the negative consequences of these would be a big, big plus. Some of these stimulants can be lethal at high doses. They're incredibly addictive, particularly relative to cannabis. And, these opiate drugs, my goodness, they can, drag you right into a life of addiction in ways that are just astounding. Obviously, it's not the case for everybody, but surely not something you want to mess with, particularly early in life when there's so many other things to enjoy.
I posted a story on the Stash yesterday about a drug testing in a Kentucky school where they had found that only 1 out of 550 kids they drug tested came up positive, and that was a positive test for alcohol. Do you think that this drug testing regime that's been foisted upon the students, these kids in America, has motivated them to move away from cannabis, which is so easily detectable, and onto these prescription drugs?
It's sad but true, Russ. So now you're suddenly in the situation where certain substances are definitely going to get you in trouble, and others are going to give you the chance to get away. Everybody really knows that hallucinogens are often used in such small doses, particularly LSD, that they're pretty hard to detect with essential, urine tests. So now I'm getting kids who are basically saying, well, we didn't want to smoke pot because we knew we'd get busted, so we each did a quarter hit of acid. I mean, that just fills me with dread. What a bummer of a situation to have this be the decision. And then I used to get maybe one email a month. Now I get 3 a week about, how can I beat a drug test in these various ways. And I feel like the drug testing industry has this evil twin, the drug testing beating industry. And so now there are products on both sides going back and forth, and I can't help but suspect in this kind of crazy octopus sort of way that they're in cahoots with each other. As each new thing develops, the other side develops something else new and just keeps us all spending money trying to keep really harmless things out of the information and hands of employers or folks who really should be more concerned with how are you doing in life, not what do you do with your free time.
Yeah, it reminds me a little of that escalating arms race that we had back in the Cold War of the 80s, where each side had that mutually assured destruction, although I guess this is more like symbiotic in nature, where, each industry depends on the other. And speaking of industries, you made that mention about the pharmaceutical industry really not clamping down on these internet pharmacies. So, there's a lot of profit motive involved in that, too.
It's a rough predicament, and I'm never a fan of prohibitions of this kind of sort, and yet I do feel like better controls for the use of these substances is certainly possible. But more than anything, educating the consumer. I got a feeling that 16, 17, 18-year-olds are running around thinking that these drugs are essentially toys, and if they had more information, they would definitely leave them alone, just as we did back, in the turn of the century when people suddenly discovered that, Dr. Poppy's magic elixir actually did have opium in it, and they said, oh my goodness, I don't want to get strung out on this, and they all put it aside. And now I think we have that opportunity if people were better informed about the pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah. Now, one last thing in this report. Again, the report tries to lay a lot of this at the feet of the parents that are involved with these kids. And one of his big quotes is to bring back that old saying from back in the day. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? How much of this is scaremongering, and how much of this report, with what they say about how the parents can help by monitoring their kids late or during their school nights or any of that? How much of that should we accept, and how much should we take with a grain of salt?
I'm afraid it's our recurring theme about correlation and causation, Russ. So it does turn out, at least from these data, that the kids who are staying out late, particularly during the weeknights, are the ones who say, not that they're using more drugs, but at least that drugs are being used when they're out, both alcohol and marijuana on this. But I don't think it's the staying out late that is the cause. And if we are going to all just pull our kids in, that's just going to make them do drugs a lot earlier in the evening. I feel like this is, in fact, an index, sort of a spurious correlate, if you will, of this family involvement thing. So what a surprise if you're hanging out at home and having a nice rap with your parents and reading a book and having a good time. You don't stay out late, but you also have this nice kind of relationship that's usually a buffer against problematic drug use, and you have other interests in things like academics and sports and religious observance and things like that are usually going to prevent you from at least developing problematic use. And I feel like this staying out late is just kind of a proxy for that. So, yeah, you can give your kids a new curfew, but I feel like that's treating the symptom rather than the cause. Instead, why not sit down and have a talk and start building a relationship?
Yeah, I had to laugh when I saw it's 10 p.m. Do you know where kids are? Because I don't remember any pot smokers talking about getting together at 10:20.
Exactly.
Dr. Mitch, it's been great talking to you again. We talk with Dr. Earlywine every Wednesday here on the Daily Audio Stash with the latest in cannabis science, and thanks for dropping by.
Thanks for having me on the show.
As High Times Senior Cultivation Editor, I'm often called into the field and asked to sample or even identify exotic strains of marijuana in their natural habitat. Now, for the first time, I've compiled more than 120 of my favorite strains into this single field guide designed to fit into your pocket as you travel the world in search of your favorite plant. From Friend's Closet Grow Room to the wilds of Northern California, this single guide covers all of today's best-known strains, plus heirlooms and throwbacks, including High Times quality photos and information on each variety's genetic heritage and growing characteristics, plus my personal notes on aroma, flavor, and potency. So this is Danny Danko, author of the official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, wishing you good times and great ganja.
The official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains is available at hightimes.com and finer bookstores.
NORML Show Live is actually live every weekday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern at live.normal.org.
A dope dog line. Doing dope dog line of clothing.
Dope dog.
U.S. Customs Coast Guard dope dog. Nickname Bustum, like most dope sniffing dogs. He's got a habit. Trained to have to have it. Pick up the tracks of the traffickers and track them like a rabbit up the coastline. K9 Control Substance Retriever. Receiver of the Golden Nose Award for leading them to the cash. Cashing in on the stash. Now he's in line with his shit of booty. Never do he do a line in the line of duty. He's a dope dog. A U.S. Custom Coast Guard dope dog. Keen sense of smell. Tracking the telltale trails of cartel dope boats. Big dope. Never gram OZ kilo too low key. Gotta be tons of P-blow. Bales of lumbo. While other dogs are sniffing one another's tail, he can track the profit sale straight to the stink account. Big banks. Banking on lawn and dirty money not stinking. As the wind blows, he get a whiff. He take a sniff. He just follow his nose. Old Mac Uncle had some drugs, C-I-A-I-O. With those drugs, he bought some arms, C-I-A-I-O. There was a bang bang here and a snort there. Here bang, there snort bang and snorts everywhere. Old Mac Uncle starts a war, C-I-A-I-O. And the war on drugs is hell on a dope dog nose. It smells where the nose goes when the doors close and the dealers want to hide the dope. In the booty, in the twat. Then they squat, they make the dogs sniff their bow as they fart in his face. Damn, for a shitty $1/2 grand. An undercover narc with a bar took a bite out of crime. Posing as a CNI dog, he bit the blind. The man with the cane made a coat. As sure as the dope boats float, the media goes comatose. Unrelated over-the-counter overdose now become drug-related. Aided and abetted by a lot of apprehension and indifference. Bigger the headache, bigger the pill. Y'all can take your medicine now, because you're going to be ill when I tell you the deal on dope. There's more profit in pretending that we're stopping it than selling it.
.76% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.normal.org.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Hoorah!
Radical Rant.
Well, at the top of the hour, Kerry opened up and told us about these U.S. attorneys who are threatening the Oregon dispensary industry, such as it is. The U.S. attorney and 33 of the 34 district attorneys are vowing a crackdown on medical marijuana dispensaries. And, you know, when you open up a medical marijuana patient lounge in the most conservative pot-hating county in the state and call it Wake and Bake and get your picture in the paper brandishing a 6-foot bong, Yeah, there are probably going to be some repercussions. This is from the Oregonian here in Portland. Federal and state law enforcement officials put the owners of medical marijuana dispensaries on notice today, warning them that selling marijuana for any purpose, including medical use, was against both federal and state law. Quote, "Are we supposed to believe that people go to places like Wake and Bake to get medicine?" said U.S. Attorney Dwight C. Holton. "Oregonians who adopted a medical marijuana law in good faith deserve an answer. Are these places where people go to get medicine, or are these just drug dealers hiding behind the medical marijuana law?" End quote. Holton issued a joint statement along with 33 Oregon district attorneys, Clatsop County Sheriff Tom Bergen, president of the Oregon State Sheriff's Association, and Newport Police Chief Mark Miranda, president of the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police. The officials also warned people who knowingly financed a marijuana dispensary or allowed one, quote, "to operate on your property also violates federal law and could subject financiers and landlords to civil and criminal penalties, including forfeiture of any assets used in support of the criminal enterprise." End quote. Yeah, well, see, there's one law that always seems to escape the notice of DAs and sheriffs on the marijuana issue, and it's one that you're not going to find written down anywhere in the Oregon Revised Statutes. It's called the Law of Supply and Demand. There are close to 40,000 legal marijuana consumers, registered medical marijuana patients in the state of Oregon, legally entitled to use a product, cannabis, right? There will be somebody to supply them that product. Now, Econ 101 tells you that when there's an inelastic demand for a product, and I'd say needing medicine is pretty inelastic as far as demand goes, and when you have an artificial restriction on supply, you get ridiculously high prices. I mean, can you name any other dried vegetable matter that retails for $2.80 an ounce? I can get Spanish saffron overnighted here for $130 an ounce. Now, Oregon crafted a medical marijuana law, and here's the problem with it. It only allows two legal means of supply. A, manufacture your own, or B, hire someone to manufacture it for you at a salary of $0. Now, option A doesn't work for a majority of consumers because, they're busy or they're too sick or infirmed or unskilled, and, growing pot takes some time and some skill. How many aspirin would you consume a year if you had to skin the bark off your willow tree to make it? Now, option B, hire someone to grow it for you for a salary of $0, is the only choice for most people. So let's say you're a middle-aged person who just returned from the doctor with a diagnosis of cancer and your chemo begins on Friday. Maybe you've smoked a joint in college a few decades ago, but otherwise your knowledge of cannabis plants and the people who grow them is, pretty much limited to Cheech and Chong movies. You don't have the time to grow your own. And even if you did, you don't know how. And where do you get that first seed or that first clone plant? Or maybe you're one of the majority of the people who are pain patients and you do have some time to establish your supply of medicine. So where do you find that kindly grower with expertise at producing cannabis at medical grade, mind you, who's going to donate 15 hours a week of his or her time tending to the manufacture of your product for the salary of $0? I don't think a posting on the bulletin board at work is going to work for you. And Craigslist, that should be safe and easy, right? Nobody would take advantage of a sick or disabled person there, right? Now, take a minute, and I know most people listening to me are probably on my side here, but just in case you are new to the show and maybe I'm not preaching to the choir here, if you're not a medical marijuana patient and you don't know a medical marijuana patient, imagine if you'd put up with this system to get a gallon of milk. Much less a decent medicine you need, in order to have a life that's worth living, right? Imagine if you'd put up with this for a gallon of milk. Imagine raising and milking your own cow. Or telling the dairy farmer that, hey, I'll pay you for the cow's feed, water, and care if you give me a free gallon of milk every month. And the dairy farmer is only allowed to give you milk, not sell it. And he can only give it to 4 customers, and he can only raise 6 cows and only have 18 calves. And when those calves get above 3 foot tall, they turn into cows immediately. And any extra cows have to be immediately slaughtered. And if you have too many cows, dairy farmer, we're going to put you in prison. Right? You think you'd put up with that? Meanwhile, while all this is going on the medical side, we still have 360,000 other consumers of this product, the illegal, healthy consumers of the product, and an entire illegal infrastructure of manufacturing, delivery, and retail that are supporting it, largely thanks to those artificially high prohibition profits. Let's call that option C. Now, remember that law of supply and demand. Those 40,000 legal customers, the medical marijuana patients, they will be supplied, right? So as options A and B aren't working out for them, option C has filled the void and tried to dress itself up in B's ill-fitting clothing. Yes, district attorneys, patients are getting their medicine at places like Wake and Bake because they can't get it at places like Walgreens. Now, there are cannabis clubs where legal consumers pay money to get in and are given a small amount of cannabis that's donated by legal producers, but nobody's selling. And there are patient lounges where legal producers are, out of the goodness of their hearts, freely donating carefully measured amounts of product to legal consumers who are, in turn, freely donating cash at weight-based amounts to the legal producers, but nobody is selling. Oh, and there's farmer markets where legal consumers are reimbursing legal producers to cover expenses. It just so happens that every different grower growing different strains with different yields in different mediums in different counties with different water and electricity rates discovers their expenses coincidentally and consistently matches the prices offered by illegal sellers, but nobody is selling. Yeah. Law enforcement's reaction, though, in the legislature to this situation was to fight to reduce the number of legal consumers and tightly restrict the producers. This is a colossal misunderstanding of the law on supply and demand. The legal consumers, those 40,000 patients, won't stop now that they've discovered the one medicine that works for them. If you make it too hard for them to get cards, they'll just be more at the mercy of those who would exploit them. And those legal producers they're not going to stop supplying the medicine if they suffer a crackdown. They'll just abandon these well-lit, relatively safe clubs and return to alleys and parking lots, and they'll raise the prices on the patients again. Oregon and America are just going to have to come to the realization that cannabis is a popular consumer good, and it will be bought and sold. Now, we can allow them to do it as is, with the patient struggling to get by and spending too much money when they do, and then the police, spending time and money and resources in a futile attempt to stop the healthy people from getting it, with state and local governments having no control whatsoever over the production or inspection of it or the quality of the medicine or the potency, and of course getting no tax revenue whatsoever from it. Oh, and of course those artificially high profits and the lack of a civil recourse through the court systems leading to crime and violence amongst the suppliers and manufacturers. Or maybe we could try something new and dare I say trailblazing, and create reasonably regulated systems of production and distribution, and make this system to serve not just patients but also recreational users, eliminating any artificial distinction between the two markets, and create jobs, tax revenue, and improve public safety. What an idea that might be. Now, I do want to commend the district attorney from Multnomah County, the county where we are here at Rolla J Studios in Portland, Oregon. He said his office has, other things to do, has more crimes to actually go out and solve, better things to do. So kudos to him, but to the rest of them, they really need a lesson in basic economics. Oh, and by the way, speaking of better things to do, did you know the clearance rate for sex crimes in the state of Oregon is 35%? Did you know the clearance rate for property crimes in Oregon is 20%? That means if you're raped or sexually assaulted, there's only about a 1 in 3 chance the cops are going to catch the guy who did it. Oh, and property crime, if your windows are busted out or somebody breaks into your property or something, chances are only about 1 out of 5 of them are going to get caught, right? Oh, and then there's some kid in my neighborhood who's tagging up the place with Shimmer, with his little graffiti tag. Look, I'm much more concerned about those situations than whether or not one adult is selling pot to another adult in a place that checks IDs and valid medical marijuana cards, even if it is called Wake and Bake. Can't we just end this silly charade of determining which pot smokers are healthy enough to put in a prison cell and work on catching real criminals? There we go. And you can do something about this. Log on to octa2012.org, OCTA2012.org, or go to CannabisTaxAct.gov. NORML.org. Let's just legalize it here in Oregon. We were the first to decriminalize marijuana. We should be the first to legalize marijuana and show the rest of the nation they have nothing to fear from a state full of happy, healthy, productive cannabis users. They'll be so jealous when we see us balancing our budgets and fixing our schools and helping our kids stay healthy with all the proceeds and profits brought from marijuana taxes. And being that we're one of the 2 states that has no sales tax, maybe there's more than 2, but we have no sales tax here in Oregon, we need that tax revenue from legalized marijuana. OCTA2012.org, CannabisTaxAct.org. Let's stop messing around. If you want it legalized, you gotta do it.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
All right. For Cannabis Carrie and Kaliko the Intern, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us here at NORML Show Live. Stay tuned for Hour 2. For those of you on the podcast, thanks for listening. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
It goes down smooth.